Hello everyone, I'm Terrence Rudolph, and I'm the State Conservationist for USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service in Georgia. First, let me tell you and the organizers of this event, thank you. Feral swine has become very detrimental to Georgia's agriculture industry for quite some time now. To tackle this challenge, it's going to take all of us working together in a delicate and synchronized effort, and I really do appreciate the role that each of you play in this fight. While we recognize that there are far more capable members on the team who can get their hands directly involved in the management role, NRCS is committed to utilizing a landscape-level approach to comprehensive conservation planning to address natural resource concerns like feral swine, among others. By looking at all available natural resources and concerns, we are able to offer our customers a roadmap that merges with the management objectives and our conservation standards. Since 2019, Georgia has been one of 10 states utilizing the Federal Swine Eradication and Control Pilot Program to help provide financial assistance for 20 projects through grants to partners for training, equipment, and feral swine trapping. This program is implemented jointly by USDA Animal and Plant Health and Inspection Service and NRCS, and reflects our USDA team effort to help respond to the threat feral swine pose to agriculture, native ecosystem, and human and animal health. What this program does not do is provide financial assistance for the destruction and disposal of trapped feral swine. NRCS is not authorized by Congress to provide financial assistance to destroy these animals. We know that you can call on other USDA agencies or partner organizations to fulfill their respective roles, in addition to helping us to conduct various educational workshops. We value efforts like these to help everyone better understand the full scope of the problem and appreciate the public and private partners involved, and most importantly, the landowners. Folks, this difficult challenge is not small. It's a huge task. This problem has been building for decades, but it has reached a tipping point in many areas that something extraordinary has to be done. And by bringing valuable resources and perspective to the table today and throughout all these workshops, there are better days ahead. Thank you again for allowing me to be part of your program. And if one of our dedicated conservationists located all over Georgia can be of assistance, please find your nearest USDA service center by going to farmers.gov and clicking on the Connect tab. We look forward to meeting you and working with you in the future.
Like Katie said, my name's Matt Ondovchik, work with USDA Wildlife Services. We heard from, was it Olivia? We heard from Olivia earlier with the USDA NRCS, obviously a sister agency, and it seems like everybody knows who the NRCS is, and I don't mean it critically, Olivia, but you know, the NRCS, everybody knows them because they got lots of money and they write lots of checks. Wildlife Services is a little bit of a smaller agency, so before we really get into the guts of what we're going to talk about today, a little bit of background on who we are. And Matt, why are you up here talking about pigs? You know, I thought you guys were USDA. I thought all you guys were meat inspectors, you know, and I get that a lot, but USDA is obviously a huge program, huge entity. Within USDA, we fall under APHIS, Animal Plant Health Inspection Service. Within APHIS, you have Wildlife Services, which is who I work with. We are a federal agency. Each state has their own program. And our primary mission in life is to resolve any kind of human-wildlife conflict. Depending upon where you're at in the state, in the country, is really going to dictate the species that those individuals or those states deal with. Obviously, we're not dealing with the same critters they have out west and livestock protection and Florida's its own little animal in itself with all the exotic species they deal with down there. So, again, just to reiterate, provide federal leadership and expertise to resolve any kind of human-wildlife conflict. 4 areas we primarily focus on, and I want you to think about these 4 in relation to feral swine. American agriculture, natural histories, private property, human health and safety. Again, those are our 4 cornerstones that we focus and protect. There's not a single one of those that feral swine somewhere, somehow does not impact. In Georgia, we do a lot of work with Canada geese. We do a lot of work on airports, trying to prevent that bird aircraft strike. We do a lot of work with beavers. We do predator work. We do urban deer work. And of course, anytime you're talking about human-wildlife conflicts, pigs are going to be somewhere at the top of that list. These pictures probably aren't the best from where you're at, but this is a freshly planted peanut field. This was taken last year, but you can see, and I saw one farmer raise his hand. You doing peanuts? No. Cattle, row crop cattle. Any row crop guys? One row crop. What are y'all doing?
Peanuts and corn.
Peanuts. So you've seen this right here.
Oh, yeah.
And you've seen this.
Oh, yes.
Pictures aren't the best, but it's just some smashed down corn. This is a freshly planted peanut field where those pigs come out right behind that planter, probably the night of, and they got a better GPS than that tractor does. That nose will find them seeds just as easy. Before we really get into outside and looking at the traps and talking about some effective control techniques, again, just a little bit of background of, again, all right, Matt, we know who you are and what you guys do, but why are you guys in the pig world? You can read through this. I'm going to kind of summarize in my own words that I repeat daily with people, but back in 2014, Congress, federal, U.S. Congress said, man, we got a problem with pigs. This isn't just a Florida, Georgia, Texas, Alabama thing anymore. In 1982, I think Dr. Menjak mentioned earlier, pigs were in about a dozen states. In 2015, they're reported in 39 states. That didn't happen naturally. That wasn't a natural migration or a range expansion. That was primarily illegal translocation for hunting opportunities. In 30 years, though, you saw what happened to the population in the United States. $1.5 billion in damage annually in the United States. Now, as I give you that number, I want you to consider that number was put together 2007, Dr. Menjak? Does that sound right? Was it 5 or 7? Pimental's number?
Pimental's 7, 2007.
So 2007, that's a 14-year-old number. Because it hasn't been written and peer-reviewed and put out in literature yet, I can't necessarily sit here and say, but that number is probably higher than that 1.5 billion, if that makes sense. Because of the damage, because of the recognition by Congress, they said, all right, we got to do something about feral swine. They dedicated $20 million to go toward essentially the creation of the first national collaborative effort to get after feral swine. And they asked Wildlife Services, again, our agency, to lead and head up this program. Now, $20 million is a chunk of money in my book. But when you start thinking about 39 states, $1.5 billion in problem, potentially 6 million pigs in the United States, $20 million doesn't seem to be real big anymore. But hey, it was a foundation. We got something going. We're moving forward. We're doing something. Depending upon where you're at in the country, obviously we're in the Southeast, we're obviously in Georgia, was going to dictate Wildlife Services' goals of this National Feral Swine Program. In Georgia, throughout the Southeast, our goal is not eradication. It's impossible. You're not going to hear me use the word eradication. We don't have the resources, the people, the power, the money, the tools to eradicate anything in the Southeast. So our end goal is to suppress populations in states where feral swine populations are large and widely distributed. They've got this catchphrase, I'm not going to lie, I'm not big on it, it's a little cliche, but they like to say we manage the damage. The way we manage the damage is by reducing populations. Now let's say we lived in a state like Ohio, New Hampshire, New York. Those states didn't have the problem that we have here in the Southeast. It was a fairly new emerging problem, new population. It was isolated. It was almost guaranteed to be illegally translocated in there. So in those areas, feral swine elimination or eradication is feasible and possible. That's all you're going to hear about eradication today from me. Just understand we're here to talk about effective control techniques to allow you guys to hopefully take some things back home to your farm, your property, your leased land, whatever it might be, and be more effective in removing pigs and reducing the damage. We're going to talk about 3 different techniques, and I'm not saying that there's only 3 techniques to control pigs. We're going to talk about 3 effective control techniques. Trapping, and there's a reason I put it as number 1, and I use the big red font. It is the most effective control method available we have at this time. Now, when I talk about trapping, we're going to walk outside here in a little bit. I saw some people mingling around already. I saw several hands raise their hands, and I'm going to probably pick on some people here in a little bit. I'm not mean. I'm just trying to get an idea of what we're talking about here. Some folks said they're trapping. I'm talking about large corral-style traps where you can target an entire sound. I'm not talking about, does anybody work for Tractor Supply? Anybody work for a feed store, weld their own traps? Man, I like this. I say whatever I want. I'm not talking about the Tractor Supply, the feed store trap that's, for $500 slides in the bed of the pickup truck. This dude right here, oh, wrong button. I stole that shamelessly from Dr. Menjak, so if you laugh at my Ghostbuster symbol, I stole it from Dr. Menjak. We're not talking about the small cages here. In fact, we're here to try to educate and open up people's eyes that there are better options than the small cage trap. The problem with the small cage trap is you're going to see some damage in the edge of your hayfield. You're going to go to the store. It's small. It's affordable. Fits in the bed of your pickup truck. You're going to take it back home. You're going to throw it up in the corner of the field there where you saw the rooting. You're going to put a bag in it. You're going to go home for 2 days, come back, and you're going to walk out there one morning. You're going to have 3 pigs in there. You're going to be smiling. You're going to think, man, I did it. Combined weight, they probably weigh each about 14 pounds, maybe 45 pounds total. You're going to be excited. I can tell this fella right here, I'm going to pick on him just because he's smiling at me. We all can look at that guy and tell he's big into the social media. I guarantee he's got Facebook and Instagram, and he's going to get his wife to come out there. He's going to pose up. He's going to put sticks in them little 14-pound pigs' mouths, take pictures, put it all over Facebook, text all his neighbors. I did it, man. I solved the problem. Did he do anything? All he did was remove 3 pigs off the landscape and probably educated the sound, the 14 brothers and sisters outside of the trap. He has perpetuated his problem. He has perpetuated the state of Georgia's problem. So yeah, we're not here to talk about the small cages and the inherent flaws with small cages. And I'm not here to promote or sell or advertise or push any style trap on you other than large corral style trap. Some of the features of a large corral style trap that will allow you to go home, build your own, buy a commercially manufactured one to have better success to reduce the damage on your property. You can see the pictures in the background. We're going to look at 2 different traps today. Some of y'all are milling around already. This bottom one here is a boar buster trap, and then at least this picture right here is a Jaeger Pro trap. We're going to look at those 2 today. There's a lot of others out there. I don't sell. I don't make royalties. We utilize them, and I'm going to show you features of both of them that are good and that are bad. And you can go home and do what you want with that information. Man, I hate this picture didn't come out better. This picture was actually taken only about 3 days ago on a bait site I've got going up in Oglethorpe County, and I'm excited. I'd like to put that big group inside the trap, so I had to include it in my slides. We're definitely going to spend more time on trapping when we go outside. We're going to go about 5 or 10 more minutes in here, and then we'll jump outside. Secondly, again, order of efficiency, shooting. There is a time and there is a place to shoot pigs. What's your name, sir? George. You trap too? Just shoot them. Shoot them. It's fun, right? George, I ain't going to pick on you. This is probably the reason I work for the USDA. This is fun, and this is becoming a more and more popular sport. And this is being, this is being jumped to in the order that people should be doing when it comes to controlling pigs. Trapping is labor intensive, it's expensive, it takes a lot of time, it can be frustrating, and Dr. Menjak said it earlier, it's a process. You can take a predator trap. We got some GTA folks here, a beaver trap. You can put it out tonight. You can come back tomorrow morning. If you know what you're doing, you're going to have a critter. You cannot put a pig trap out tonight and have a sounder of pigs in that trap tomorrow. get those pigs habituated, comfortable, pre-baited, and inside that trap. So a lot of people go to this right here. And look, I understand it. It is fun. But it's a recreational opportunity. And if you take nothing home from today except for this disease brochure, this key message right here, the recreational sport hunting of feral swine will never control the pig problem. I don't want to pick on the DNR. I think what they're doing is 100% appropriate and acceptable. But we've been, for 30 years, unlimited. Kill pigs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We got more pigs now than we've ever had. Recreational sport hunting will never control the pig problem we have in the state of Georgia. Right now, our peanut farmers, you can skip the trapping. I don't blame you. When when your tractor's hooked up and you're putting seed peanuts in the ground, you can forget about getting those pigs on bait. I mean, they're out there in those ag fields and they're causing damage right now. You needed to be there yesterday. Some other scenarios where, shooting might be my primary go-to. Dr. Cobb alluded to it. I've seen it a handful of times, but cemeteries, a lot of times you don't want to be playing around in a cemetery trying to get pigs on bait because you're perpetuating the damage before you can actually solve the problem. So you got to go in there and put pressure on those pigs. Golf courses. I'm not a golfer. Usually I ask, and there's like Dr. Cobb and like one other person raises their hand if they're golfers. But if you've ever been anybody golfed at Hard Labor Creek State Park? You ever seen the damage up there from the pigs on the state park? You know what I'm talking about. I mean, it doesn't make it fun. It's a lot of money and time that goes into golf course maintenance, and then all of a sudden you got a pig come out there, cause damage to a greener, fairway, tee box, etc. So in that scenario, a lot of times you got to go in there with guns, remove the culprit, and then focus or follow up with some trapping efforts. We'll talk about the process of trapping a little bit later when we get outside, but the first thing we do is put up a camera with some corn or whatever bait source you prefer. Let's say you have a lone boar pig coming to that bait source. It's not worth my time investment or the energy to go in there and put up a large corral style trap for one pig when I can sit down there with a thermal and a rifle and remove him. So there are scenarios where this is a go-to and this should be used as a tool. It should not be your first go-to is my only point here. The last thing I want to talk about is aerial operations. As an agency here in Georgia, we've been utilizing the helicopter for probably about, 6 or 7 years now. Extremely successful. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. I'm just going to basically say it's very habitat and it's very seasonal specific. Are we going to have success in Stevens County in northwest Georgia in the middle of July? Absolutely not. But in the winter months, in some of the country around here surrounding these ag fields where tree vegetation and foliage is gone and we can have visibility, you absolutely can have success. The other thing to consider with that is it's large-scale operations. It's not 100-acre, 200, it's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60,000 acre collaboratives where you can go and have an effect or an influence with that. Those three, and we can do, we'll just do it right now. I'd be cheating everybody because I know it's going to come up in the Q&A later on, so I want to go ahead and just touch on toxicants real quick. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but it's a hot topic and it gets asked every workshop, so I want to go ahead and address it. The National Wildlife Research Center, which is nothing more than the super smart folks of the USDA, it's the research arm of the USDA based out of Fort Collins, Colorado. For about 8 or 10 years now, has been working on a product that essentially the pigs will feed on. They go off in the bushes. Within an hour to an hour and a half, 2 hours after ingestion, they do die. The EPA is the registering agency for all toxicants, pesticides in the United States. Sodium nitrite is the product that we've been working with and trying to develop. Sodium nitrite has been used successfully for feral swine in Australia and New Zealand, if I'm not mistaken, definitely Australia. And so basically we've stolen some of their information and we've been trying to apply it to certain things here in the United States. The United States is a little different again with the EPA. We had to have a certain percentage of success kills in a lab environment before we could go to a field trial environment. We did get the permits. It's been a couple years now, I'll be honest. We've had some speed bumps in the road, if you will, but we got the permits to go to the field. We did 2 field trials, one in Alabama to simulate a humid, hot environment, and one in West Texas to simulate a arid, hot environment where pigs live. Sodium nitrite is, ultimately, you guys can read it, it's inexpensive, it's a very stable bait, it's humane. It's nothing more, the big irony, it's nothing more than a food preservative used in making bacon and sausage. In layman's terms, it's a salt overdose for a pig. They cannot metabolize sodium nitrite the way majority of other other mammals can. There's an enzyme that we all have that's about that long. Pigs like that enzyme. That does not allow them to metabolize it. So in extremely small dosages, it's extremely lethal to a pig. We have not asked the EPA for registration yet. Once it does get, let me rewind. If it does get registration at the national level from the EPA, it will then come to Dr. Cobb in the Georgia Department of Ag, and it will have to receive a state certification. That's the word I'm looking for, Doc. Thank you. Oh, sorry. A couple of the things that has taken a long time, you're thinking, man, Matt, 8 to 10 years. Well, keep in mind, to my knowledge, my understanding, there's not been a toxicant registered in the United States, with the exception of one, we're not going to go down that avenue today, since like the 80s. And so it wasn't like the EPA had a handbook that said, hey, follow these guidelines and in 6 months we'll get you there. So we had to develop delivery methods that would be very specific to the target species of feral swine. I like to show this picture. I think it's pretty cool. I've seen a variety of different feeders that people in the private sector have tried to design and innovate to come up that would allow a toxicant to be delivered to feral swine. I saw one time, it was probably about the size of that space right there in the room. Looked like a giant spaceship, had a computer inside of it, recognized 17 different sounds that a pig would make, and the chutes would open and the pigs could come in once it heard the pigs and they could feed. Everybody asks me, well, how does the chute close, Matt? I don't remember. But my point is something like that's not affordable. It's not feasible. It's not going to go in the bed of a pickup truck. It's not going to be weatherproof. So what our scientists have come up with is essentially this, it's kind of this cutting board material, almost as similar to what these tables are. It's very weather dependent. It's very durable. It's very, the pigs can stand it, obviously, chew on it. Few non-target concerns when you're talking about sodium nitrite. Raccoons being number one. They actually took these big, mean Indiana, Midwestern bred raccoons and strength tested them to see how much they could lift. I don't remember exactly, but it was like 24 pounds or something. So they put a 27-pound magnet on this feeder mechanism, this little trough, if you will, so the raccoon couldn't open it, but pigs working in unison or a big sow pig could easily still pop that open. So the take-home message is the toxicant is not going to be a silver bullet. We're still going to chase pigs with traps and helicopters and rifles, and we're still going to be hunting them on WMAs, and people are still going to be chasing them with dogs and knives and everything else. All this could potentially will be another tool in the toolbox. It'll be a very restricted use pesticide if and when it does receive registration. I know it was going to come up. I want to go ahead and address it now, and somebody can ask later on about birth control and sterilization and all that, and we can resort right back to this. I guess we'll start right here looking at this dude. This trap here, has anybody own it? Anybody have a boar buster? Anybody used a boar buster? Y'all got one? Successful? Catching pigs? Has anybody seen the videos on YouTube and online, like the one this guy's making? I was just telling them, I said, I don't mind the tripod so much. It's when I look out in the crowd and I got the guy doing that right there at me. It's always one. So this trap right here was built and designed by the Noble Foundation out of Oklahoma. And the Noble Foundation is an organization that primarily does wildlife research. And they were trying to do a study on white-tailed deer. And they were using big drop nets to capture white-tailed deer. Now, a drop net, if you're not familiar, is nothing more than exactly that, a big net that drops. Sometimes they're enormous, 60 by 40 foot. The problem they kept having is the pigs were coming in and eating their bait prior to the deer coming in. So one night as they're sitting in the truck with the drop net, you had to be on site to manually activate it. They're sitting in the truck and the light bulb went off in one of their heads, and they said, hey, why don't we just drop the net on the pigs, remove the pigs, we'll come back out here tomorrow night and catch the deer. And by God, it worked. And of course, them guys are so smart, all them researchers, they just started running with things. We're going to talk about this here in a few minutes, but you know, there's a lot of research already on large corral style traps, and now they've got this drop net. They started hybridizing the two, and fast forward about 8 years, and probably God knows how many blueprints later, you're looking at the boar buster trap. There's a couple of features about both of these that I want to discuss that's really the biggest take home and important message. The first thing I'm going to, and I'll probably jump back and forth, but just bear with me. The first thing I want to mention, ignore this right here. I want you to look at the grate or the size of the grating on this trap right here. There ain't a pig in Georgia that will come out of that little hole. Similarly, I'm going to jump over to this panel just because I'm talking about it. You notice this panel is graduated. Small at the bottom, larger as you get to the top. The reason I stress and point this out, and I've got some pictures when we go back inside, somebody remind me, I've got like 3 more slides. You can go to Tractor Supply tomorrow and you can buy a horse panel that's going to be about 52 inches, and it's going to be this size grid all the way to the bottom. You're going to buy a bunch of T-posts and number 9 wire, and you're going to buy bags of corn. You're going to get a gate, and you're going to think, by God, I learned something. I'm fixing to do it. You're going to go out there, you're going to build a trap. You're going to spend all the time, energy, effort to pre-bait and build a trap. You're going to get the pigs inside. If this is all the way to the ground, what's going to happen? Amen. Them little pigs are gone. As soon as you walk up to that trap, you might have caught 10. You're going to keep the sow pig, and those 9 little ones are gone. Don't do yourself the injustice. If you're going to build the trap, build the trap. This trap right here obviously is a super small grid. I don't know, it depends. Look, I don't want to get into the argument of what people call it, sheep and goat. You know, some people are like, oh no, that ain't sheep and goat, that's something else. And it's small. We all agree it's small. The shape I want to talk about real quick with height before I go on. Height of panels. To right here, that's a 60-inch panel. This trap was manufactured by Jaeger Pro. I'm not going to lie to everybody. We use a slightly different panel, USDA Wildlife Service. We built our own. It does not have this additional jump bar. For demonstration purposes, I do show these jump bars per Jaeger Pro's request. They gave me the trap to demo, so here I am demoing it. I would not build a trap less than 60 inches. And the reason I stress and emphasize that is you can find 48-inch panels pretty readily available. If you build a and you buy the sheep and goat and everything, man, I'm doing it right. This is the way Matt told me. Similarly, you're going to come out there that next morning, you're going to catch pigs, you're going to feel good about yourself, and you're going to watch that sport model 110-pound boar pig just straight clear that 48-inch gate and not touch the ground. Or the second thing that will happen, all they've got to do is get their front legs right here, and it's a belly roll. Yeah, they may have a scratched up belly, but they live to fight and root your field another day, right? Now you're educated. You got educated pigs on the landscape. So my point is don't think for a minute, I got some awesome pictures when we go back inside, don't think that pigs cannot jump or that they will not climb, because they will fool you. They are athletes. The next thing I want to talk about, this trap is obviously not complete. On that trailer, there's about 5 more panels. We didn't build the whole thing. I just wanted everybody to see. If this was completed, this will be wrapped around. I would probably add in those couple panels just for time and for the demonstration. We didn't do that today, but it's a large trap. Imagine it was completed right now in this one. What's unique about the shape on both of them? It's pretty obvious, right? Round. Why do we want round? No corners. Why don't we want corners? They'll absolutely climb. So if this was a 90-degree corner right here, you approach the trap from the outside tomorrow morning after you catch pigs, and they're all going to pile in the far opposite corner from you, and they're going to start climbing this, and they're going to be laddering on top of each other, and one of them is going to win the lottery, and he's gone, and you got a pig on the landscape still. So by using a round shape with no corners, you can avoid them from climbing on each other and avoid them from laddering on each other and avoid that potential for them to go over top. The size of the trap is also important. I told you I'd discuss some of the advantages and disadvantages, and we'll start right here for sure this time. This trap right here, and I'm going to drop it down so everybody can see it in a minute. Boar Buster put out their manufacturing to WW Livestock. And WW Livestock out of Oklahoma did a great job of kicking out YouTube videos and propaganda. And where's our buddy, our social media buddy here? He probably spread it all over his Facebook and shared it with everybody here. There was videos all over, and one of their big pushes was pigs can come and go from 360 degrees. Makes good sense, right? The pig doesn't have any kind of apprehension. They can come and go. This trap is only 18 feet inside diameter. Major advantage to this trap, pigs can come and go from 360 degrees. Major disadvantage to this trap, pigs can come and go from 360 degrees. It's rare, but we've had it happen. Have you guys had any issues with them outrunning it? No. So when I drop it down, you'll see what's going to happen. This trap, again, by the thought, and everybody has this idea, oh, pigs aren't going to look up. You know, they're used to walking under bushes and brush. And don't get me wrong, we catch a lot of pigs with things. I'm not here insulting it. I love this trap. I recommend it. But don't think those pigs don't know that thing's not there. And when it drops down, you see the way it's riding up on those rails. They've got this 1-point jack system right here. Makes it really easy to assemble and put up by yourself if you need to. If you have a buddy, I definitely recommend it. But when this thing goes down, it does not just drop straight. It's obviously got to ride that rail. And there is a slight delay. I say delay, it takes it a second. And if you get a very leery pig that's not standing in the dead center of that trap, they potentially could or will either outrun it, or fella mentioned that, yeah, they get right up underneath that trap and it'll save you a bullet. I'll drop it down now. We'll talk about triggers and cameras and all that maybe in a little bit. Just depends on time, but everybody watching? So obviously the pigs were in the center. I'm sitting at the house. This trap particularly works on a live video stream. Sends a message to the cell phone. That's something, it's really not even, we don't have time today to even get into all the triggers and everything else. Both of these systems are cellularly activated. I hope that makes sense to everybody. You can activate everything off of your cell phone, an iPad, the computer, whatever it might be. So you don't have to be on site. It's a man-activated system. Old school root stakes, the pedals in the back of the cage trap that you can buy at Tractor Supply. It's an animal activated system. When you have an animal activated system, you do like Mr. Hooker here and you catch your 3 14-pound pigs. When you have a man activated system, you can do like Miss Marlette right here and catch all 22 of your pigs. There was another point. Oh, the non-target concern with these cellular activated systems is no more. If a bear goes underneath this thing, cool, I'm getting some cool video of a bear. If a deer goes under here, cool, I'm getting some cool pictures or video of a deer. Turkeys, raccoons, crows, squirrels, anything that's not a pig, I can just watch. I don't have to worry about or take the chance of potentially catching, wounding, hurting, killing. We work on a lot of private property, and you know, probably some of y'all's property, hey, you want to grow big deer, right? You know, you take a chance to hurt a big deer on somebody's property and your invitation is gone. So the non-target's the other. And then being able to target that entire family group. You know, if you've done your pre-bedding process, you put your camera out, you know there's 12 pigs in that group, you start, and there's a couple things you can do. With this trap, it's either all or nothing. That trap is either on site or it's not on site. With this trap, you can build it piece by piece. Generally, I'll start with that gate, and we're going to jump over here and talk about the gate in a minute. And then I might just add a couple panels and allow those pigs to become comfortable, to take that apprehension out of those pigs. That's the key to pig trapping, just non-pressured pigs. You can't be out with your thermal at night. You can't be running your dogs every night. You can't be banging at them out of the tractor every single day when you're trying to plant and effectively trap pigs. Does that make sense? Pressured pigs, you're not going to have success. So you've done all your pre-bedding, you know there's 12 pigs. I get a notification on my phone, hey, there's 6 pigs in there right now, you know, watch it for 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, there's all 12. Once I have all 12 pigs in there, that's when you can activate that trap. Another major advantage to the cellular systems is being able to target that entire family group. I'll probably think of something else and we'll come back here, but we can kind of slide closer over here. We'll talk about this other trap for a minute. So this trap right here is, again, it's more your traditional large corral style trap. There's a lot of different variations that you can do to build this trap as far as size, shape, location you'd put it. Again, some of the main features I just want to point out is, and this is probably what a lot of people, if you're going to try to build your own, it's going to look something similar to this. And you may not use a rigid panel, you may use a 16-foot flex panel with a T-post, and that's fine, it works. Build the damn thing strong enough to hold a pig. If somebody, when you get done, walk back over there, that board buster's been in the field a lot. We've caught a lot of pigs. Go look at how beat up that thing is from pigs running around and beating on that thing. So consider that when you start building something. You want it to be strong. You want a T-post every 4 feet. You want to be, you know, some double strand barbless barbed wire holding it to your T-post if you're not going to use a rigid panel like this. 60 inches again. This gate, and there's a variety of different gates out there, the bigger the gate, in my opinion, the more success or the more chance of success you're going to have, because those pigs moving that apprehension. Everybody's seen the small little 3-foot wood plywood door, and I've seen several, and we're going to talk about this specifically. This threshold right here, in fact, this is an old gate. The new traps don't even have that threshold in them. And somebody's going to laugh at me and say, "You're crazy, man." I'm not crazy. I'm telling you, you will not get a pig sometimes to walk over that. So a lot of times what we would have to do is take a pickaxe and trowel that out, trench it out, and bury it. So when you're building your own homemade 3-foot gate out of plywood, and you got a 2x10 at the bottom to provide support, if a pig won't walk over that, you think they're going to walk over a 2x10 to go inside your trap? Threshold-less is absolutely the better way to go. Let's talk about that cage trap I picked on so hard inside for earlier. You can take that pig and walk around the barnyard all day. As soon as you hit that asphalt, that pig hits the brakes. It's foreign to their feet. So why, inside the cage trap that William used to run, he told you it used to have a metal floor in it. He ripped that metal out, or he spent 2 hours throwing dirt and leaves and everything else on top of it so that it wasn't foreign to their feet. It's the same exact thing in a feral pig. If it's foreign to their feet and it's not what they're used to walking on, you're making your job harder. So a smooth threshold where there's nothing for them to step over. If you do have to have a threshold, bury it. Put it under the dirt. Takes a little bit more effort, but I promise you the payoff is worth the investment. This particular trap, again, is cellularly activated. It's a little bit of a different system. Well, that's a lie. They now have a live video camera as well. I was going to say it was still pictures only, but they do have a live video now. None of that matters so much as just understanding it's cellular activated. You can activate it from your phone at home. Of course, in this scenario, this is the only way those pigs can come and go in and out of. So if you strategically have your bait located where they're not going to, and you don't want to bait right here, but you'll be surprised. I'll drop it for you in a minute. It drops pretty quick, but you want it to where those pigs are inside the trap, committed away from the gate. Everything works through apps on the phone nowadays. It's going to send a message to your camera. Your camera receives the communication from your phone. The camera communicates to a VHF solenoid control box inside here. And all that's happened is this little plunger is dropping and that gate's falling. 3 o'clock in the morning, pouring down rain, those pigs are inside there, they're caught, they're done, you got them. The one thing I'll tell you, and again, this is a demo, it can be 3 o'clock in the morning, pouring down rain. Those pigs know where they came in that trap at. And so I highly recommend supporting this gate. I'd like to put some T-posts sometimes right here on this main edge just to give it support, because when they get wild and rowdy, they're beating on that pretty hard. With a corral style trap like this, you've done your pre-baiting and you have 3 pigs coming to that feeder or that bait. Do you need to use 12 8-foot panels to catch 3 pigs? Probably not. If you got 33 pigs coming in here, I'm probably going to build that trap as big as I possibly can. Does that make sense? pigs are social critters. They want to be around each other. They don't mind feeding around each other. But if you watch them, and it sounds like a lot of you guys have done it, there's always that bully in the group. You know, he's going to be pushing other pigs around, particularly juveniles. So you want to give them plenty of room where they can all be inside there, and you can target and catch that entire group. I could go on and on and on. I could talk about bait sources. I'm going to be honest with you. Soured corn is my preferred go-to. I don't use any fancy Kool-Aids or Jellos or yeasts or anything like that. I just like water and corn with a lid. Keep the corn completely submerged. Let it cook. When it's hot like this, it doesn't take it long. In the winter months, sometimes it's a little bit harder because it's colder outside. We've got some guys on the coast, they get their hands on some soybeans. They like to use soybeans. We've got some guys over in southwest Georgia in peanut country. In the certain times of year, they get peanuts. Peanuts are gone. Hey, peanuts are hot. Hey, I know what that smell is, so you can get those pigs to come to peanuts. So there's a variety of baits out there. I'm not here to push or sell, or just some of the gimmicks, some of the stuff that you can go to Walmart and buy. I'm not going to tell you not to. It's not always necessary. Yeah. YagerPro.com, BoarBuster.com. Google both of them. People always want to know, Matt, how much are they? And I'll normally tell them, but the first thing I tell them is, listen, go online. I don't sell, promote them. I don't get no royalties on it. Contact the manufacturers. They're both available online. Jaeger Pro is based out of Columbus, Georgia. WW Livestock is out of Oklahoma, but they have local dealers. There's one in Albany and there's one in Lexington. So, and I'd be happy to put you in touch with any of those folks. As far as prices, I'm not even going to go down that road this time, because if anybody does, anybody in the metal fabrication world? You are? Whew.
And the prices is going through the roof.
Metal prices have gone up at what, about 30% in the last 3 months? So I have no idea what these traps are going to cost you nowadays, but I just mentioned it. Go online and do a Google search for either of them. Odin suggested I maybe talk about and mention bait placement rather. So before we put a trap up, I'm looking for a spot where there's fresh pig sign. I'm not, and you'll see them all the time, I'm not the kind of person where I'm going to put a bait site. This is a bad example because of the building, but I hate being in fields. I hate being on the edge of a field. I hate being visible. I want to be in the bushes. I want to be in the woods. I want to be in the edges. I want a canopy above my trap. You're asking a pig, and you guys have all seen it, you're asking a pig a lot to come walking 300 yards across a hayfield to walk into a trap that has corn in it, where there's not an escape route or any kind of cover or protection for 300 yards around it, but they got a pig trap sitting out there in the middle of the field. Go to the edge. Go to where those pigs are going to be comfortable, where they're traveling already. I like a canopy on top of that trap. I'll build these traps, including that one. I'll build them around trees, bushes. You obviously don't want to impede your visibility if you're using a cellular system where you can see with your camera what you're dealing with. So I'm looking for a spot though that has pig sign to put my bait and my camera up initially. It's fairly accessible with a UTV or a truck or something, because these things, you ain't carrying them in on your back. Yeah, you're gonna need a trailer, you're gonna need something. So you want to be somewhere fairly accessible. It doesn't have to be the flattest spot in the world, and I get asked a lot of questions. I get that question asked a lot about the boar buster. You'd be surprised. You can put that thing on a little bit of a hillside and it'll still work, everything. But you're looking for somewhere that's clean, somewhere that's flat, somewhere that's going to work good, you can access. Put my bait on the ground. I'm going to put up the camera. Once I have pig activity at the bait, I know there's 10 pigs, 12 pigs, whatever it is. I'm moving forward, putting the trap up. I'm going to go around just because I'm too lazy to lift the gate back up. When I start building my trap, if my camera was hanging right here at Mr. Ray's forehead and it's pointed down here and I got my bait right here, that's about where I'm going to put my gate. Does that make sense? This far in, if the trap, hell, you could probably even come back a couple feet. You want them pigs committed to the back of that trap on this particular scenario. So you start putting up your gate and putting your panels around it, you want those pigs committed beyond, they're not going to run. On the boar buster trap, when you put that thing up, you want that bait just absolutely slap dead center in one big pile. If you try to go and sprinkle edges and do all kind of fancy stuff, they're going to feed along the edges. When that thing starts coming down, all that pig's got to do is right there that fast and he's gone. Make sense? If you're going to use sour corn in July, and I've seen it, hell, I've done it. But all of a sudden it dawned on me one day, you take sour corn, you sprinkle it all the way out in the inside of this trap, and it's 115 degrees outside. What's happening in about 45 minutes? You got dry whole kernel corn. You got your turkeys and your deer and everything else in there. That's the reason I like the sour corn, is it works off of the pig's moneymaker, which is his nose. He can smell it and generally come to it. You can avoid some of those non-targets. Don't get me wrong, I've seen 2 hungry deer where there's high deer densities eat a whole 5-gallon bucket of sour corn in one night. It'll happen, but you can avoid a lot of times the non-targets. With that sour corn too, in the summertime, if you put it in one big thick line about 5 feet long, a 5-gallon bucket about 4 inches thick, you're maintaining that moisture. Does that make sense? You're maintaining that scent. If you spread it out thin on the ground, it dries out in no time. You've lost your scent, you've lost the reasoning for even going through the process of souring that corn. And like Odin said too, if you have that a simulated line or trough, headbutt, 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 you can just count them in a row. Digging a hole is a great idea. If anybody couldn't hear, she asked, what about digging a hole for the corn? And hey, I'm all for it. Some of our guys do it. Take a post hole digger or a spade shovel. You dig that hole, what you're doing is you're forcing those pigs to work harder and be there longer to get that last kernel of corn out. So absolutely. Cracked corn versus whole kernel corn, 100% probably personal preference. I've used cracked corn, but the reason I used cracked corn was the landowner was using cracked corn trying to attract turkeys. The pigs showed up, and at that point, I'm not going to change the bait on them. Does that make sense? If they're on cracked corn, we're going to stick with cracked corn. If they're on deer high protein, we're going to stick with deer high protein. So that's personal preference on the bait, but digging a hole, it's a great idea. It keeps them interested longer. Do keep in mind though, wherever you dig that hole, you're gonna have a hole there for years because they're gonna turn it into a crater. Saloon doors, everybody familiar with what he's talking about? The old bar room that the pigs were designed to push through, and it was 5 or 6 years ago. It was the hottest, greatest craze in the world. Oh my God, we're gonna kill them all. It's gonna be the old West. They're just gonna keep pushing in. 2 of them get in there and all their buddies are gonna wanna be with them. In the same exact style, that rooter style. Saloon is going like this. They bust in like the old bar. The rooter style is where it lifts up, and it's the same multiple catch mentality. Research has proven they're not effective. You're not catching more pigs. You're not, they're generally very small to begin with. The issue you can have with any kind of multiple catch devices, as one animal comes in, you got animals going out, if that makes sense. I'll tell you what I've seen, and I've seen some folks that, look, they're working with what they got, and that's fine. They'll prop that thing up like a rabbit box on some sort of tripwire or root stake, and it's a one-time drop at that point. If they do get another pig to push in, pure coincidence luck. But the idea is to get all of those pigs in there and then have it fall on them. If for some reason you do have a scenario where you just don't catch all the pigs, particularly if you're using a cage trap, I immediately am going somewhere else. I'm getting away from that cage trap. I'm getting away from where they've been spooked, they've been haunted, there's bad juju there. Go somewhere else and see if you can't get them back on bait and try a bigger or a different style trap. If it's a scenario where you did have some pigs escape from, say, a large corral style trap, or they rooted out for some reason, you'd be surprised. You can and will get lucky sometimes, depending upon the age of that pig, the experience of that pig. It could come back to that same site. So I wouldn't necessarily abandon it if it's a large corral style trap immediately. I don't know what much more to say, but yes, keep after them, try somewhere else. Matt, we just caught 14 pigs in our boar buster. We went out there and we killed them all. We got to move that trap now, right? No. Blood is not a deterrent to keep pigs away from a pig trap. And there's going to be somebody out there right now saying, no, you're wrong, Matt. And that's fine. I'm not here to argue. I'm just here to tell you based on my personal experiences. I can sit here and tell you multiple times we have caught 2 sounders in the same day in the same trap. So with blood, with, the trap torn up where the pigs have been in there rooting around. The one exception, and there's going to be a time and a place, You got one lone boar pig that goes inside that trap, and you catch that one lone boar pig. If he was the boss or the bully or the daddy of that entire area and his scent lingers in that trap, a lot of times it's going to take a rain event or just time before you might get bait activity at that site again because of his, his dominance or his stature in society. So I just go ahead and address that now. Now look, am I, I might kick some dirt over top of the blood or, pour a little corn in the blood, but I'm not pulling this trap and taking it somewhere else if I know there's more pigs or a second sounder that's utilizing that same site. Well, in this scenario, I'll be honest with you, because it's a rigid panel and the way these hook, I'm not going to use any T-post, but probably right here at the gate. That's it. Now, if I didn't have this rigid panel and I had a 16-foot flex panel that didn't have this frame and I was driving T-posts, I'm going to overlap those panels about a foot. And I'm going to wire them together, and I'm definitely having a T-post at every joint, and then I'm probably going to have a T-post every 4 foot. That makes sense. The other advantage too is if you can see just outside this gate, and I've had this scenario, this gate's up, you get little ones come in, that sow may stand right there. You can see her, and at least you know she's there. I had a scenario actually one time that, 100% capture success is always the end goal. You want to catch them all. It's never ever it's not going to happen all the time perfectly. You're going to have to get to a point where, all right, I've had 9 go in there for the last 4 nights in a row, and my peanuts are getting damaged every single night. Do I sit and wait on that last sow, or do I catch those 9? You absolutely catch those 9. But what you do with that last sow is you go out there and you either sit on that trap, or after you drop that trap, you go out there with a thermal and you try to remove her while she's in that area. I had a spot one time, it was just 3 or 4, it might have been, we'll say it was 4, little ones would come in and that sow would stand right there. And the first night I thought, okay, no big deal. She's gonna relax, she'll come inside. She'd been feeding on the corn, so it was new to her. Remove that apprehension. The second night she came in and laid down. And I swore I could have dropped that gate and clipped her nose. And she just laid there and I thought, man, that's rude. That's rude behavior, and the gatekeeper, yeah, it might have been y'all sow. Yeah, she found me too. So what I did on that third night is I just went out there and I already had a deer stand in that area. I was able to sit in that deer stand and had a rifle with me. And there's a couple of options. This is you can operate and drop this via cell phone, but you can also, it comes with a remote control where you can sit on site and remote control drop this gate. So I sat in a deer stand, was watching with a thermal, then 3 little pigs went inside the trap. Because none of y'all were there, I had my right hand trigger on the trigger and the left hand on the remote, and I pulled them both at the same time. Might have been a second or two delay, to be honest, but once I heard that gate fall on those juveniles, that adult took a bullet and we had all of the pigs dead. On the note of these traps right here, I want to point out something. You're looking at a single gate system. With these Jaeger Pros or any of the other, guillotine style traps, you put another gate back here, those pigs can stand on one side and see all the way through, no different than that boar buster theory. Or if they're standing right here and they know they can go either that way or that way to escape, you're removing that apprehension. Removing that apprehension, removing the pressure is going to increase your chances of success in removing the pigs. And you can synchronize these gates to where they'll drop together off of one camera. I'm going to tell you though, you want to make sure both your batteries, there is a battery that sits inside these control boxes, and yes, it's bad when one goes and one doesn't. So yeah, you want to make sure everything's functioning 100% properly and good. So they were asking if I've ever used the net trap, and the pig brig is what you're referring to, right? Okay. They've done a great job too at marketing. Like their PR, they've kicked out a bunch of videos, and I've had probably a dozen people in the last 3 weeks ask me about the pig brig. I had the opportunity, Tony DiNicola, who was a private guy with White Buffalo, He's the man who designed and created that trap ultimately. And Tony was in Georgia probably a year and a half ago during the development stage of that trap. And I got to meet with him and spent the whole day riding around with him and really talked about the system. And he sent me home with 2 prototypes. So I have tried the prototypes. I'd be lying if I told you I put my hands on a finished final product, but I've seen the prototypes. I've caught pigs with the prototype. I think there's some real good uniqueness and thought in what he's doing. He thought outside the box, which is what we need when it comes to new trap designs. It's fairly inexpensive when you compare it to some of these other systems. I'll still stand by a one-time drop guillotine or boar buster drop every day of the week. And again, it goes back to, it's a multiple catch device. You're not gonna get every pig to root underneath a net. It's not natural for them to want to have that thing running down their back. And you will have issues with escapees. Just mark my word on it, you will have escapees. The trap's there. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's some uniqueness to it. I know a lot of, look, I got a counterpart in South Carolina right over the line there. He loves it. Catches the fire out of pigs, but he'll also send you videos of pigs getting out of it, so. And we've got a couple of our guys in South Georgia that are still playing with it, but that's what they're doing, is playing with it. I think if somebody has an inherent skill set or is a trapper, they can refine that system and have success with it. This is plug and go. I mean, a monkey can put this up for the most part if they have pigs pre-baited, and generally, you get what I'm saying. You've got to finesse that pig brig a little bit to have success with it. Talked about the round shape. You want to build it large enough to hold the pigs. You want to have a graduated panel, or at least a small enough grid that the pigs are not going to escape. Minimum height of 60 inches. You'll make sure it's strong enough to hold. And there's nothing, I'm telling you, you put the energy and the effort into putting the pigs in the trap, it'll crush your soul to watch them run out on you. There's your jumpers. And somebody, if you want to see, Dr. Cobb just showed me another video 30 seconds ago of another pig that probably cleared about a 4-foot wall, but there's a little dude coming out of a panel that ain't quite right. And you can see that dude right there, right? He gone. Mr. Ray was asking about these earlier. Again, avoid this threshold, the saloon, the rooter style. Look, use what you got, but use them as a one-time system. Don't rely or expect those animals to continue to increase and push their way in.